Bringing characters back isn't always easy. Sometimes you've got to let them step out of the story for a while until the time is right, until the moment when their return will bring the highest amount of excitement, the greatest amount of impact, and where they can come in to remind you of what's come before in order to show you how much has changed, to highlight what is still to come. And as Bleach is moving toward its conclusion, Kubo starts to bring back familiar faces from the past to bring us full circle, and it is amazing. I've always loved things like this as we head toward big climaxes of stories. When characters return for the ending, provided that their return feels right, and they don't suddenly feel like completely different people, and that they can fit back into the story in natural ways. We've already kind of started this trip down memory lane with things like Mayori's Arankar zombies, and with the dead Fullbringers being shown to be around somewhere, although we haven't seen them since. But these chapters brought the biggest development for those kinds of things, especially for someone like me that spent so much time in previous arcs analyzing characters and have found myself really missing some of those people. So let's talk about it, because there's a whole lot to discuss. Welcome back. Let's do this. Last video, I kind of held back on getting too deep into Aizen being freed from his imprisonment because I wanted to see how that scene was followed up on, and I am so glad I waited because we get so much more of him here. So obviously Aizen has been in prison since he was beaten at the end of the Arankar arc, and he's been absent since, outside of the anime giving us that great scene of him when Yuabaha tried to recruit him a while ago, but this is his real grand return, as our new head captain Shunsui sought to free him, or at least loosen the leash a little bit. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and things are getting very, very desperate. I can understand why Shunsui would want to at least ask Aizen for some help, because one of the things that makes Aizen so dangerous is how smart he is, and another thing is just how freaking powerful this guy is. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but Aizen still has the Hogyaku within him, yes? I know it kind of rejected him a bit, but it's still a part of him in there, yeah? Is that how he's only grown stronger while he's been imprisoned? He's still all sealed up and bound, so he's not doing the classic pump up in prison kind of getting jacked thing. I don't think, at least not in the traditional manner. Maybe he's doing like mental workouts, maybe he's doing some brain teasers. The scene reintroducing Aizen had an appropriate amount of dread laced into it. I particularly loved Aizen initially speaking from the shadows, like he was darkness itself. It felt like a bargain being struck with something you shouldn't even be speaking to, and maybe it is. The Soul Reapers have been pushed into a corner, so this is believably something that would at least be considered, at least by one person. Everything about Aizen in this scene is so intimidating, even just when he's engaging in the conversation. For someone like him, words are some of his most dangerous weapons, so that alone was enough. Not to mention, Aizen had already unsealed parts of himself on his own, because of course he did. I was a little confused in the moment by Shunsui unlocking the parts that were already unlocked, but some helpful patrons pointed out that he was using those keys up so nothing else could be unsealed, which was smart. But yeah, they're not letting him completely come out without any restraints. They're only unlocking a couple parts of him, like his mouth, his ankle, and I forget the other thing. I'll put it right here. And on top of that, Aizen is forced to sit in a chair that will limit his spiritual pressure, but not completely. It just suppresses the range that it can go. So don't get too close to him. Yeah, amazing. After being semi-freed by Shunsui but confined to that chair, Aizen makes his grand public reappearance in front of all of the Soul Reapers in an incredibly badass moment when they're all being overwhelmed by like spillage of Yuabaha's transformation. Everyone's panicking, swarmed by all of those like disgusting things, and Aizen saves them all without even having to stand up. He just stays seated and rescues the Serate single-handedly while sitting down. So good. Just unbelievably badass. Like so good. I'm not usually one that's like, oh, they're aura farming, but like this was, yeah. This is crazy. It's crazy. Aizen's back. I missed him. He's always got answers, and he's so strong. And Aizen showing that he's now out of prison goes about as well as it should. People are rightfully concerned and angry considering who this man is and what he's done to them. This is the good kind of drama because it would be ridiculous if the Soul Reapers were just okay with all of this. Like, Rukia needs to punch this man in the face while Momo stabs him with a sword, and maybe like Hitsugaya can come up and embarrass him somehow. And that's just like a few people, but so many people have every right to be pissed off just at the idea of Aizen being let out. If it was even suggested as a hypothetical. But now it's really happening right in front of them without any of them having any say about it. But I don't blame them for reacting this way. They've been having a rough time. So many of their friends and colleagues have just been slaughtered, and now here's a guy that used to slaughter all of their friends and colleagues. So in their eyes, it's just a whole other massive problem to add on to the massive problems they're already having. They don't need this. They don't need Aizen, but they do need Aizen because look what he did while sitting down. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be a popular decision for the new head captain. It's honestly an interesting choice to give Shunsui though, because it really highlights what he's like as a leader. He believes his decision was a necessary one, and he's willing to take the heat from his subordinates for it. Still, imagine on like day 2 of being the new leader, you let your group's biggest enemy back out into public. It's not a great look, but he fully accepts that, and he's okay with it, and he's willing to let all of them be mad at him. Because for elected officials, polls don't matter if the end of the world is happening later today. It's either the world ends and people are mad at him and they all are destroyed while mad at him, or, you know, this pays off and people are like, all right. Since replacing Yamamoto, we've been seeing Shunsui make some interesting plans that I don't think are the kinds of things that Yamamoto would have done. I don't think Yamamoto would have put Unohana in the position that Shunsui put her in by having her fight Zaraki and kind of regress to her more bloodthirsty self, all in an attempt to make Zaraki stronger while risking losing at least one but maybe both of those very capable warriors. Yamamoto wouldn't have done that. He went out of his way to keep Unohana out of war zones, maybe in an attempt to keep her from falling back to her old ways, and he stopped trying to make Kenny stronger after like day 1 of training. He definitely wouldn't have gone about that like Shunsui did, so it's an interesting comparison, and so is this, because I also don't think Yamamoto would have ever done this and let Aizen out for any reason at all. I just don't see that happening. What it comes down to, as far as their leadership styles, is that Yamamoto was kind of overall very by the book, and when he was willing to cross a line, he would still kind of keep one foot in, maybe to not risk becoming what he used to be back in his younger days. But Shunsui obviously is a bit more lax. But even more than that, we know Shunsui likes games. To me, it's not that he views this very serious situation as a game, but more that he's willing to gamble on surprising game moves to try to win. He's willing to take the big risks. And his plan with the Kenpachis worked in the end. Yeah, Unohana died, but Kenny grew much stronger. It was what he wanted to happen. So we'll have to see if his plans for Aizen will also pay off. They might. So far, releasing Aizen helped save everyone, so that's a pretty good start. I've brought up my trepidation before about someone like Aizen returning, because as much as I wanted to see him again, bringing back major antagonists can be challenging, because so often when they come back, they're kind of watered down compared to when they were the main threat. A lot of times they're suddenly not as powerful or as intimidating, or their personalities unnaturally soften, or they're treated as more of a joke and lose everything that made them the villain that they were. It's happened plenty of times and plenty of things, but I'm so happy to confirm that that isn't the case here. Sosuke Aizen's comeback is handled perfectly. He's treated with the right amount of respect, caution, and concern, and if anything, he's somehow even more powerful in every way. Kubo was brilliant to have him pull all of this off while restrained and sitting down, because it plants that seed of thought where it's like, if this is what he can do like this, what would he be like unsealed? Aizen flat out threatens to bring the Soul King's palace down to them. through his spiritual pressure. He's just gonna pull it right on down like he's gravity itself. And the craziest part is a part of me believes that he could actually do it. If not for those restraints, he might have dragged that whole place down to the ground. That was the moment when I knew for sure that Aizen hadn't been worsened by his return. His impact hasn't been diluted. He's still powerful and cunning and intimidating, if not more so than ever before, even while he's just sitting on his ass. He doesn't have to stand up to inspire so much awe. It's incredible. To be clear, I don't mind enemies becoming allies. It can work really well and can be a lot of fun if it's like a begrudging alliance or a big character evolution moment, as long as it stays true to who that antagonist was and feels consistent and earned. We are in an interesting position where Aizen could be so helpful as an ally, but I really do think there's a chance that he pulls a fast one, as he does, where he always blows my mind. I half expect him to take over the role of the final villain at the very end. Maybe he pulls some trickery to take what Yuabaha has gotten. I don't know. It could go either way, and I love that uncertainty and the paranoia that Aizen has instilled in me ever since he blew my mind way back. It's still there, and it makes this whole thing so wonderfully nerve-wracking. I'm just so glad he's back, and how Kubo has pulled it off. It was hype, it was interesting, and it was scary, just like Aizen himself. It was the comeback he deserved. Aizen isn't the only enemy that looks like they'll be helping out our heroes now, though. No, we also had 3 of the Stern Ritters defect and decide to help the Soul Reapers, and they were the 3 survivors of the Ausvalen that I was hoping would join. We did also see that Nanana Najakup also survived the consecration ritual and revealed his powers when he attacked Aizen. That was sort of interesting, I suppose, but unfortunately he was then killed by Baz B when Baz offered their help to the Soul Reapers, so that seems like it's it for Nanana. He didn't really contribute much to the story. I thought he was going to be a little bit more of a opponent when he was first introduced. Oh well, he had a pretty zany design, and what little we saw of his powers seemed pretty unique, but I am glad that it's these 3. Baz seems like a no-brainer just because of his character archetype. You know, he seems like the type of character that would be doing this. I love Lil Toto in general, and Gigi is of course fun, so it's a strong selection of characters to use here. They all got stabbed in the back by their king, so hopefully they'll get to have a little bit of payback. I think that would be a lot of fun. The anime gives the creation of the gate to the Soul King's palace much more grandeur than the manga did, which the show has been doing for a lot of scenes, but this one was helped so much by the sheer scale of it. Instead of it kind of being kept in the lab or in a more confined space with a handful of people, we get to see like all of the surviving Soul Reapers arrive to take part in lending their energy to the gate. While it made it clear that there were more Soul Reaper survivors than the manga did, which might take away from the impact of the invasion, I suppose, but I loved that we got to see familiar faces of some less important Soul Reapers there too. Like, I really thought these 2 from the beginning of the 1,000-Year Blood War were going to be kind of, you know, more central to the narrative, but not really. They were just kind of an access point at the beginning of the arc. There's also a seemingly small difference between the manga and the anime that really caught my attention because it may change the fate of certain characters. So after spending all of last video talking about Ukitake, I couldn't help notice that 2 different things happened to him between the 2 mediums. In the manga, Mimihagi is shown to be absorbed by Yuabaha when he absorbs the rest of the Soul King, and we see it get pulled out of Ukitake as he's left in like an uncertain state. Like, I think they say he's like unconscious or comatose or something. But we don't see this happen in the anime, and I'm left to assume that Ukitake's still in the lab with the arm of the Soul King still seeping out of him? Maybe? We don't see otherwise, so I assume he's still there. It's a small thing, but it also puts him in a very different position, and I'm very curious about that. Maybe they're just gonna have it fully leave him later or something, but Yuabaha not absorbing it was kind of an interesting choice, so I don't know if Ukitake and Mimihagi are maybe gonna play a different role in the anime. I don't know. Obviously, Ichigo survived Uryu knocking him off the platform. Yes, even in the anime version where Uryu also shot him in the chest, but as I talked about last video, I loved the increased stakes of that moment, even though the outcome was still pretty obvious. But yeah, Ichigo's okay, and he's healed, and the way he was actually knocked unconscious was absolutely hilarious, so naturally the anime found it too funny to include. My poor Cone keeps getting shafted from the anime. They don't like humor. They don't like comb. But as we kind of regroup and, figure out the next move, Yoruichi brings a new ally to the table as a portal opens and out steps a very familiar face. My guy, Grimmjow Jackerjack. Grimmjow's back, baby! Yeah! Oh my god, finally! I've been waiting. I'm like, I know he was there. We all know he was there. God, I've missed him. Grimmjow being back isn't necessarily surprising at all, really. I brought up a while ago that the anime subtitles in particular really gave it away, but it was also just obvious enough from the manga panels too. And like, who was left in Waco Mundo, The hints were all apparent, but just because it wasn't surprising didn't mean that it wasn't exciting to finally see happen. Grimmjow is one of my absolute favorite characters in Bleach, and his return has been long awaited. He was one of the standout characters during the Arrancar arc, and one of the most memorable characters in the whole series. It just feels right that he should be here. We never saw him die. He's back. And I love how true to Grimmjow this reunion is. He doesn't come back and immediately try to save the day, but instead he falls right back into his rivalry with Ichigo, as if nothing has happened since. That was all he cared about by the end of the Arrancar arc last time we saw him, and that definitely hasn't changed. It's like, oh, of course the first thing he would do once he's back is try to beat Ichigo and prove that he's better. He went through so much in the Arrancar arc just to try to do that. He was betraying his allies and, abducting people, all so he could fight Ichigo multiple times. So this would be, round 4 if they do fight? Of course Grimmjow would care most about just trying to pick a fight with Ichigo. Naturally. Typical Grimmjow, right? But that's part of what makes this kind of thing exciting, when you have old enemies come back to be uneasy allies. The clashing personalities, the bitter history. In a series where Ichigo has a few rival characters, Grimmjow to me is the most effective in that position, and I love that the rivalry is just as intense as ever, even when it's the end of the world. He's also got a slightly new look when he comes back, but it's mostly the same old Grimmjow I know and love. He's got a shirt on now, and some pants. Not that he was naked before, but you know what I mean. And Grimmjow wasn't the only Arrancar to come back either. We may have already gotten to see Nell return earlier in the arc, but that made it even more surprising to see her back in her adult form as Nelliel all of a sudden. Apparently Urahara made her a device where she can switch between ages when she wants to, but to me, her ever wanting to turn back into a kid again is a bit strange, right? Why? I guess she might just enjoy it or something, but her being a child was the result of an unforeseen attack on her person, not something that she ever wanted. But then again, actually, I guess I should take into account the amnesia she had when she became a kid, and how a straight up different version of her was kind of created, I guess. I suppose there's an interesting duality to her now, where she's kind of lived 2 different lives, and maybe she wants to be able to live in either, or I suppose this is still the kid Nell mentally, right? Because she never got that fixed. Does she remember? I can't remember. Does she remember her old life? I feel like she did, but I don't remember for certain. Anyway, I think this makes sense. She's still she's 2 people now, essentially. In a way. I like that, actually. I think we figured it out just sitting here with me rambling. I think that makes sense. I actually kind of like that. The bigger question is, where are the rest of the Great Desert Bros? How are we supposed to defeat Uabaha without the greatness of Pesce and Don Tachaka? And how are we supposed to do it without Bawa Bawa? It's not possible. We need them back. But as someone that talked a whole lot about the Espada number system, I appreciated that it got brought up here when Nelliel and Grimmjow were arguing. Since Aizen was the one that developed it when organizing his Hollow Army, you'd think the whole system would be abolished, and apparently it has been. But Nell still brings it up to say that she outranks Grimmjow. But honestly, even if the system was still in place, I don't know that Nell could technically call herself the number 3, She got replaced a long time ago, and yes, it was under nefarious circumstances of sabotage, but she still wasn't part of the current Espada when Aizen was beaten. I'm just saying, and I consider myself, at this point, an authority on the Espada number system. I digress. I'm sort of getting what I asked for at the end of the Arrancar arc, where I thought Grimmjow and Nell should work together in Waco Mundo once Aizen was gone, but I was thinking of them more as co-rulers or something at the time, before I found out who the new monarch would actually be. Speaking of which, real talk, is Queen Horribel alright? I keep thinking we might cut back to her, and with these Iran cars returning, I thought we at least might get like an update. Maybe with Kielge gone, they were able to free her, although actually I think that she was trapped in the Vondenreich headquarters in like the Shadow Realm, right? So maybe not? So considering the Shadow World overlapped ours for a bit, maybe she can be more easily saved now? I don't know. In typical Horribel fashion, we just aren't seeing much of her, but I hope she's freed by the end. If these returns and these reunions aren't enough for you, don't worry. There's even more as we get to see some old Fullbringer faces, but it wasn't the ones that I thought it would be. I have been expecting to see some Fullbringers ever since we saw that Ganju was training the 3 dead execution members a while back. Like a while back. That was like the end of Core 1, wasn't it? I've talked before about how I've been waiting for them to show up again so Tsukishima could save the day as he should, as the first character that we ever saw in the series. And with Ganju back with the cast now, I've honestly been expecting that these Fullbringers were gonna pop up like every single time I turn the page. Every time I see Ganju's face, I'm reminded that he hasn't even mentioned them. Seriously, where are they? But yeah, I finally get some Fullbringers back on the page, but it wasn't those Fullbringers. No, instead it's 2 of the survivors of the Lost Agent arc, Ruruka and Yukio. I wasn't expecting to ever see either of them ever again. I thought they were heading out into the world to try to live better lives, but here they are, smack in the middle of a war. It turns out they were recruited by Urahara to help out, which makes sense given what they can do. Their powers are already coming in handy, since they're like good for dimensional transport kind of stuff. But apparently we didn't need any dirty boots because Jackie isn't here. I'm just kidding. It's really because she lost those powers, so there's no reason for her to be here. She'd be kind of useless, and let's be honest, I don't know if dirty boots would have been super helpful. It's like dimensional power to create virtual reality, dimensional power to put people into pocket spaces, and then someone tracking in muddy shoes. It's all good, Jackie. You stay home. You too, Mo. I hope you got a girlfriend. I hope you're living your best life. The Lost Agent arc was so good. People are crazy. Anyway, it was so surreal seeing everyone all together sitting in a circle formulating what to do next. You've got our Soul Society arc team, some Iran cars, and some Fullbringers all in one place conversing. It was so cool, and it really does feel like Kubo is taking bits and pieces from every arc and sprinkling them in, letting them all play in one spot. The only thing that could have made it feel even more like that is if we had Don Kanonji and like a group of old school hollows there for the substitute arc representation. Oh, a little thing, but while talking about their travel plans, they talk about the Valley of Screams, which took me a minute to realize was from the first Bleach movie, Memories of Nobody, which back when I watched it like, I don't know, 2 years ago, I assumed was non-canon like all of the Bleach movies, but apparently it's canon, or semi-canon, or I don't know. The point is, did my girl Senna exist? I guess even if she did, no one would remember anyway, which is kind of the real tragedy of that story, but also kind of makes it interesting in a meta way when it comes to whether or not it happened, and I guess it did. But then again, Ichigo remembers going to the Valley of Screams, so I'm not sure how much of a mind wipe the end of that movie did. Maybe it only scrubbed away Senna's presence, and he has a vague memory of going there and fighting those, those really boring villains that time. Anyway, I was just surprised to have that acknowledged at all. Great movie though. My favorite of the 4 probably. Like, that was tragic. Back on topic. All of these old faces are really making it feel like we're approaching the end, and it's exciting but also bittersweet. It's feeling more and more like we're preparing for the big final charge against the villains as we're reminded of where we've been, who we've met, and the entire journey up to this point. It's so good, but even with all of this extra help, I don't know how we can beat Yuabaha. His transformation into apparently the new Soul King is pretty creepy, and the design for this new look is especially noteworthy. He's got like a veil of black goo and eyeballs covering him, which is consistent with some of the other Soul King aspects we've seen, like with Mimihagi for instance. It's got that unknown Pokemon kind of vibe, or some of the aesthetics of Father from Full Metal Alchemist, where it feels ancient, unknowable, but obviously kind of all-seeing as well. I chose my channel icon because of my name in reference to the Eye of Agamotto from Doctor Strange. I had no idea just how important eyes were gonna be in Bleach. Like, I thought that was a Naruto thing where eyes were all the rage. But hey, we love happy accidents. But yeah, I love the terror that Naklavar showed when he saw him. You get the impression that they're dealing with power that they can't fully understand here, as Yuabaha has essentially become a god and is now moving whole cities into the sky through force of will alone. And everyone's starting to prepare to make the big move. The final battle feels imminent. We've got all these players back and moving into place. It's so good. I love it so much. I was so happy to see all of this, whether it was Aizen, Grimjow, Neliel, Fullbringers, Senna, sort of. It was great. These were great chapters, great episodes. I was so happy throughout all of it. Like, just hype. The whole thing was so hype, and it's getting so good, and I can't wait to see where this is gonna go, and how these characters are gonna contribute to the end. If I had to make my predictions, right here, right now, Aizen, I still think, like I mentioned, is gonna pull some shenanigans at the end and turn out to be the final villain. Grimjow, I think he might be a problem, but mostly I think he'll help. I think he'll Grimjow around, you know? He'll probably try to kill Ichigo a few times. Nell will just be helpful. Hopefully the Great Desert Bros will show up in a pivotal moment and defeat Yuabaha. And the Fullbringers, I don't know how they're supposed to keep up, like, to be honest, if they're going into this fight. I just don't think Yukio and Ruruka are built for this kind of war. So I don't know if they'll die or if they'll mostly just be kind of support. But I think the other Fullbringers, hopefully when they show up, maybe we'll get a Fullbringer reunion of Execution minus Jackie and Mo. But I think the other ones, especially like Ginjo, are more built for a fight than these two. So I don't know about that, but yeah, all these characters are back, which is crazy. I'm excited, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's where we'll stop for now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was fun, because these episodes and these chapters were fun. A lot to think about, a lot to talk about. And it feels like the final battle is really about to get going, so we'll start talking about that next time. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.